Vehicles. So I've been with UTA for over 21 years. I've had my master ASC certifications in medium and heavy truck as well as transit. Started out base pay back when the Olympics started and worked my way up through our apprentice program, and now I'm a manager in the shop. So I'm going to turn over to Robert.
Hello. Hello. My name is Robert Rigby. I've been working with UTA for 25 years. I started out as a journeyman mechanic on the floor and worked my way into the fleet maintenance supervisor. I currently work with our parts department, fleet engineering, rideshare, and I also provide support in the shop for our technicians on the Ford Cutaway transit vehicles. And yeah, I'll turn it over to Justin.
Hello, my name is Justin Smallin. I work at the paratransit division, Riverside and UTA. I'm a tech. I'm also a mentor trainer, so I help people get through the apprenticeship program, and I'm a union leader there as well. I've worked there for about 8 years, and I've loved every second of it. So this is a great opportunity for me, so thank you for letting me be here. I'll hand it over to Dave.
Hello, my name is David Moore. I've been with UTA for about 5 years. I'm a master journeyist as well as an automotive ASC master. I'm just started as an instructor as well as being a technician on the floor. I'm going to start our presentation. So these are the buses we get to work on every day. We get to be real familiar with.
Was working great. No,
Technical difficulties. Computers aren't my specialty.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to talk about kind of the lift operation and maintenance. We'll go just over basic operation, things we look out for, we find out in the field and out in fleet, giving us problems, and some very basic maintenance practices we use on our wheelchairs to keep them running well. So here's the lift we use. We've got mostly, I think, all Braun lifts in our fleet right now. Some of the main components we'll be talking about. We have an outer barrier here. Provides kind of a bridge from the ground to the platform. Platform's this big main area here where the wheelchair or the passenger will ride on. And then we have the inner roll stop right here, and that keeps anyone from going past and falling off the lift there. And then we have a threshold warning plate. Helps us kind of keep passengers from walking off the lift when the lift is down. So a little alarm in it will go off if there's pressure on it, someone walking on it, let us know that, hey, we shouldn't be there. And then we got our little pump module or pump tower where kind of the guts of the lift that power it up run up in here. So as always, read the manual before operating the lift, get familiar with it. You know, this is a quick presentation. We don't have time to go over everything on the lift. If you're providing any service or repair to the vehicle or any adjustments, make sure you're familiar with it and read the repair manual there as well. And always thing to remember, we have moving parts on these lifts. Keep your hands, loose clothing, name badges, whatever clear of any pinch points or anything you need to worry about snagging on. Just be aware that moving parts, and some of our lifts are capable of lifting 1,000 pounds, so they can definitely do some injury if you're putting your hands where they shouldn't be. So operating the lift, we always want to try to avoid high traffic areas when possible. Out in the field, sometimes that's not always possible. Also, we want to make sure they're parked on a level surface so we can get a nice solid deployment, make it easy to load our passengers. We always make sure our parking brake is set, vehicle in park. We want to ensure the doors to the lift are open and secure so they don't fall in the way, cause damage to the door. And when we deploy our lift, we want to make sure that there's plenty of room, no trees, branches, signs, anything in our way. We want to make sure that the whole area is clear of both of ourselves, passengers, and others. And when we load our passengers, we always want to make sure that the passenger is centered on the platform, away from the yellow outer areas, and not interfere with the lift performance. So operating the lift, we'll just go through some basics. We've got the unfold button here, down button, up here, and then up and fold. So when we unfold the lift, we bring it down, the platform will drop to floor level. And once there, we can load a passenger from inside the vehicle. If the passenger's on the ground level, we'll lower it, we'll move over to the down button. We'll drop the lift down to ground level, and we hold that down button until the outer barrier ramp pulls down to give us a bridge from the ground to the lift platform. Once we've got a passenger on the lift platform, we're able to bring them up. We'll move over to the up button, hold an up button, bring it up to floor level of the bus. We can unload the passenger. Once the passenger is clear of the thing, we can just hold the fold button, bring it to a fully folded, stowed position. And when we're stowing it, we always want to make sure that platform gets fully stowed. Sometimes it might look stowed. We want to make sure on our lifts, we go up until we hear the pump kind of change pitch and noise. It'll kind of go from a different to a It's kind of hard to demonstrate, but that means it's fully stowed. Sometimes if you don't fully stow it, it might cause it more likely to drift. We'll walk away from the sensors and it might give us a problem during deployment when we go to unfold it next time. But in the event something goes wrong, we have a manual operation available for the lift. And we've got some things to look out for so you don't have to use that manual operation of the lift. So, then you've got no power, you've got no other way to get the lift up. Our lifts have a manual backup. There's a handle located on the pump module on the side of the towers for the lift. And we'll use that handle. So to lower it from the folded position, take the slotted side of the handle, we insert in the pump pressure relief valve, and we can rotate that counterclockwise about half a turn and let it go down slowly. We don't want to crank it too far or too fast to have it just kind of fall out. We're just going to go nice and slow. And so we'll drop it down to floor level of the bus. And at floor level, we can unload a passenger from there. If the passenger's on the ground, we'll just continue releasing the pressure until it reaches ground level and the outer barrier fully deploys. From there, we can load our passenger. We're going to make sure we get this valve fully closed by turning it clockwise. And then from there, we'll load the passenger onto the platform, and we can raise them up manually. It definitely takes a little bit of arm strength sometimes to get this thing going manually, but we kind of just pump it up and down until we get to floor level, load our passenger. Once the passenger's clear of our platform, we can pump it up all the way until we reach fully stowed position. So we'd rather not do that because that's kind of definitely a lot more work than we really want to do, doing it manually. So some things we find that prevent the lift from operating properly. Our buses have an intermotive module. Most transit vehicles have some sort of similar device, if not intermotive brand. So all these lights are lit up here. This green light here is indicating we're good and ready to go, and the lift should be working properly as far as this portion of the bus is concerned. Here's the intermotive, so you can see those icons a little better on the thing. So that would be meaning that light was green. That means we're powered, ready to go. We got a PB. That means our park brake is on and engaged. So if you see this light's off, it just means you probably don't have your park brake on. Probably give you a buzzard warning too if you open up your lift doors and the parking brake's not set. It'll definitely want to let you know that it's not, and it'll buzz and scream at you. Importantly too, vehicle in park. We should be, if we're not in the vehicle, it should be in park anyway, but it'll definitely scream at you if you don't have it in park. And this last little icon here, this is the lock button. That indicates our interlock system is engaged. So this prevents the bus from being able to be moved when the lift is deployed, the lift doors are open or engaged to cause an unsafe condition. We don't want the vehicle to be able to be moved with the lift deployed. So if we come to see some of these lights are off and our lift isn't working, things we commonly see, sometimes it's as simple as the lift's not being turned on. We have a switch kind of on our center console area. It has to be switched on for the lift to be able to operate. Additionally, too, on the tower itself, there's an on-off switch that's kind of master power for it too. We want to make sure that switch is on. And if that switch is on too, we want to make sure our ADA lights come on. And there will be a little green light next to it indicating we got power. Another reason we might not have power going to our lift, this is a common problem we see. This is a little connector underneath the dash, kind of sits right above the brake pedal. Oftentimes gets bumped, you jump in and out of the bus, gets kicked, might come a little bit loose. And this is what allows the lift system to actually talk with the engine computer on the bus, and those things need to be able to talk to for the lift to operate. So can be loose connection or even fully disconnected. This could definitely prevent our bus from, or lift from operating properly. So something we commonly see in our fleet is just these come loose or get bumped or connected or just in the shop and someone might have forgot to plug it in after scanning it with a scan tool. So another common problem we see when we go to deploy our lifts, they'll kind of hang up. We'll go out and or they might not have power to the pendant, and we'll see these little lift tight latches will be engaged. Those are there as a safety mechanism to prevent the lift from falling out into the doors when the bus is moving, driven, or just even sitting parked. The hydraulic system always have a little bit of a leak or a bleed off to allow it to drift. That's a normal thing with most hydraulic systems. So in the event we find that, we can just usually hit the fold button and fold back up. Sometimes when this happens though, we'll lose power to the pendant control, and you might have to reach up, push up on the lift a little bit using a closed fist so you don't pinch your fingers, kind of push up on it while you're holding the fold button and see if we can get our power restored to the pendant. Sometimes it's as simple as that, and we're able to go to a normal unfold and a normal deployment. I'm going to hand it off to my associate Justin.
Thank you. Okay, so here's some other things that we can look out for. As you can see here, we got a block here, and this is on our Sentry lifts, and that block is an indication of if you were to put it on an uneven surface, that outer bridge plate right here would not come down. Both of these feet right here and right here have to hit the ground for that outer bridge plate to come down. So if you're on an uneven surface, you're going to have a hard time getting that passenger off that lift because it won't come down all the way. Sometimes we have issues with them coming up, not very often, but we have had issues where they're coming up. If that's happening, contact your dispatch, let them know, or manually do it. You can manually pump it up, and that should come up if you use the manual for that. But yeah, this is just a great indicator of why you wouldn't want to put it on an uneven surface. That outer bridge plate won't come down at all. So a couple other things we can look for is loose or missing fasteners, and it can cause major lift issues. If this lift had gone out and we hadn't seen it right here, this thing may not have ever folded, and it could have caused us major damage. So some of the things to look for on your pre-trips would be loose connections, loose wiring, that kind of thing, and just kind of check over the lifts, in general. Your plate here, it's got all kinds of welds here. You want to check that, make sure they're not cracking, things like that. If they are, don't drive that, don't take that bus out. We need to fix that immediately. Because if these are lifting 1,000 pounds and those welds have cracked, we can have some serious problems, and we don't want that. So, you also want to look for anything sharp. If we're lifting passengers on here and you see anything kind of sharp that's hanging around, make sure that it's not in the way of our passengers. We want to make sure that when they lift up, they're not hitting anything, just things like that. Just as far as what to look out for. One of the big things that we want to look out for too is you can see right here, this is your pendant cable, and it kind of hangs off to the side there, and it can get caught when you're folding the lift, and it can actually get pinched and stop working overall. So we want to watch out for that and make sure that pendant cable is free and clear of everything. Some of the other things that we can look out for when we're inspecting our lift is this is on the back side of the lift, so this is on the bottom of our platform. And right here you can see that it's been damaged. And that's not necessarily a thing that will stop the lift from working, but it is something that will stop that outer bridge plate from coming out or going back in. And that is something that we can typically fix with a minor adjustment as a maintenance crew. So if you see something like that and you're having issues, contact your dispatch and get that fixed right away. We can most of the time adjust those and bend this back just a little bit and actually get it working in adjustment. We can adjust it right here through that bolt. And a lot of the times I see where these come out of adjustment anyways, and as you're folding that lift down, it'll come down, the outer bridge plate will come down, and the pendant will lose power. And if that does, we can just push our finger right here on this outer bridge plate and that pendant should come back on. If it's out of adjustment. It's something to look for, and it's something that can get you back and forth between passenger to passenger until the end of your shift if you needed it to. And this is on the Century, not the Millennium 2. The Millennium 2 is a little bit different, so this is only on the Century lift here. So some of the other things like hydraulic components, check for signs of leaking or damage. So sorry about that. So right here, we can get leaks. Here and here, we can get a lot of hydraulic leaks. If you see a hydraulic leak, contact your dispatch, find out what you want to do with it. Find out how bad it is. You know, if it's leaking a lot, we need to get it fixed. And as you can see right here, we got wires that have been pinched and that are rubbing, and we don't want that either. So write that up in your DC books, things like that, and maintenance can get that fixed. You know, contact your dispatch if you need to, things like that. Overall, we want this lift working. We want it working well. So we do a lot of pre-trip inspections, and that's some of the stuff that should be looked for in pre-trip inspections. Any cracks, any kind of hydraulic leaks, anything like that is all stuff that should really be looked for in a pre-trip inspection. So this here, it may look like a leak. It's not a leak. It's just over-greased. So we use a lot of lubricants on our lifts, and we over-grease. That's an indication that it's been over-greased. So sometimes it may look like a leak, but it's not actually leaking. So if you look further down or something like that, and the floor is wet or something like that, you'll more than likely have a leak. That's when you should be a little more concerned. Okay, so grease is kind of more sticky, and I mean, I wouldn't really touch it anyways, but but yeah, that's not necessarily a leak. So a leak may not mean it's a leak. You know, it may look like a leak, but it may not be. It may be that it just needs to be cleaned or something like that. Write it in your DC notes. Let maintenance take a look at it, and it's better safe than to be sorry. So right here is all the points that we actually use to lubricate these lifts with. And right here is the lubricant that we do use. We always clean our lifts when we do our inspections. We'll clean the platform, we'll clean the outer bridge plate, we'll clean the inner bridge plate, and the threshold. We also take apart the threshold, and this is a really important job for us because if we take apart that threshold and there's a bunch of dirt under there, we clean it out because that threshold may not work if we don't do that. So always make sure to check your threshold, and I'll go over that a little bit later on in the slides. We always try to wipe down all of our excess oil. This is just quick, like we do this every 3,000 miles just about. We lubricate our lifts. We're really on top of that. And that is something that I really like about our shop is that we are always on top of lubrication. We believe in preventative maintenance because it keeps you guys down the road. I mean, preventative is key. So when checking the hydraulic fluid on a pre-trip, you want the lift fully deployed all the way down on the ground. And if you were to look and this lift was fully deployed, the fluid is right here. The maximum fluid level is right here. So I would say that this would be a little bit low. And if it was like that, I would start checking for some leaks. Okay? And like I said, you want to make sure that is fully all the way down. The lift has to be fully deployed, otherwise it'll have a high reading because all that fluid will be back into that reservoir if you're all the way up.
The only reason it would be low is because of the leak, right?
Typically, yeah. I mean, unless somebody did some work on it and didn't fill it up all the way, yeah. Really, the only reason it should be low is if you had a leak somewhere. So right here, we got our outer barrier checks and our inner barrier checks. And as you can see, we got our model Dave here doing some modeling for us. So when you're sitting there and you're doing your pre-inspection and the lift is all the way out, as you can see, he's standing on that outer barrier. If you hit that up button and that lift starts to go up, don't use it. Get a trade out, do something different, but don't use that lift. It should not go up and it should kill the power if you're standing on that. That is for our wheelchairs. If there is a wheelchair on that, it should not lift that wheelchair. It will actually kill the pump, and then you won't get any more fluid going there, and it won't work. It will, however, come up an inch or two off the ground on the back end here. Okay, is there any questions on that one? Okay, so the inner barrier check here is a good check to do when it's deployed, and all you do is, as you can see here, his foot is on that, and if you push it forward, again, it should kill the pendant, and the little light and the pendant will go out. Okay, that's if a wheelchair rolls forward, it will stop the lift automatically. It's a safety feature built in that if the brakes aren't set on that wheelchair and it rolls forward, it'll kill the lift. It won't stop working, and that needs to be checked on every pre-trip inspection. Okay, and typically when I do that check, I reach down and I put my hand on this threshold here, and I should hear an alarm. And I should actually get a flashing red light off of the pump case as well. If you don't have both of those, get a trade out, call dispatch, do whatever you gotta do, but don't use that bus. Okay? Any questions on any of that? The next thing you're gonna wanna do while you're there is you're gonna wanna check your seat belt, your safety latches here. Make sure the case isn't damaged. Make sure you pull it out. If it's stretched or frayed or anything like that, it needs to be replaced. Okay, make sure the casing's not damaged. Make sure it clicks in. Make sure it does all that. It's just a quick check. Takes just a couple seconds to do that. And if it's frayed at all or damaged at all, it just needs to be replaced.
I have a question on your seatbelt.
Yes.
Is there an alarm saying that it's not flash when you have somebody in there?
No, there is not. But that is a good suggestion that we should maybe look into. We don't have any actual alarms when it's not latched, no.
That feature was on a Rikon lift. We did have Rikon lifts at the time, many years ago. And if the seat belt wasn't latched, it would not go up, but that's not the situation with the Rikon lift.
That is a current safety feature on our MCI buses, our big over-the-road coach. That's still used on those motor coaches.
Yeah. So here are some various examples of lift settings and adjustments. Now, right here, these towers, if you adjust those at all, that lift will stop working and it won't. Specifically Tower 4, which is on the other side, if you adjust Tower 4 at all, that will no longer pick up 1,000-pound capacity. And that lift will stop working. So we don't want to make any adjustments unless you are a trained professional. But we do adjust these quite frequently. Specifically, one of the major adjustments that we do is when you're trying to fold the lift in, there's a 50-pound limit, and it will not fold in if you put 50 pounds on that lift. We do that all the time because if that's out of adjustment, it won't fold no matter what. And you kind of have to help it up. That is something else that you can do out on the road, is if your lift platform is not folding up, you can actually give it a little bit of a hand to help fold it up and then just put it in the DC card, and maintenance will take a look at it and do an adjustment on it. Okay, but yeah, they have a 50-pound capacity. If that lift is going in at 50 pounds, that's a big, we can't do that. Because we don't want a wheelchair going in if somebody, hits that fold button, and that's just a bad situation. So in conclusion, you want to do your pre-trip inspections. There's some maintenance that we went over, just some basic maintenance that we went over. Communication with your support team is crucially important. If I don't know, then I can't help fix it. So when you're writing in or you're telling dispatch, be as clear as you can be. It happened at this time, it happened here, it happened. Just be as clear as you can be. If you have to write a whole story, write that story. It helps us to help you, because we really are a support for you guys. Safety is always key. So remember, when you're just putting passengers in, always think safety. You know, everybody wants to go home at the end of the night. So are there any questions? Anything at all? Concerns? Okay, well then I'll hand it over to Matt here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You're doing the battery on the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Okay, what if that keeps going out, sucking out all the juice on the material?
You know, I haven't actually ran into that too much, but what I could say would be, let's see if I can find it. You're talking about right here? This is our main battery cable, and it goes down under the floor, and our batteries sit right there.
Yeah.
So a large part of the time, right here, is going to be loose, and it'll kill that lift as well if it is loose. So some of the stuff I wouldn't really mess with it unless you're a trained professional, because that's getting into electricity and you can get shocked and everything like that. But that would be something that I would look at.
So was your question about battery power?
Yeah.
So if the battery power is low, your lift stops working?
So what happened was when we had to get shut down, and then we went back to work. So we did the chairlift, and it was working all right. But then it would die out. So then they replaced the battery on the bottom of the bus. And then a couple of months later, it started dying out. And now I see the battery light keeps coming on again.
On your dashboard?
Yeah.
Okay, that could be, it could be a charging issue. It could be batteries. You could have got a bad battery, different things like that. That's not necessarily a lift issue. It's just more of a charging, starting issue or a battery issue.
Does your vehicle kick into high idle when you're using the lift?
No, sometimes it will just go off. It'll just click
Right.
off.
So typically when you're running your wheelchair lift, like especially during the summertime, if you're running your AC front and back, you've got your lights turned on, the greatest thing that happened in the last 15 years in my opinion is LED lights because they use a lot less power and not such a drain on the system. But if you have a weak charging alternator, and especially if your system doesn't kick into high idle when you're using all this equipment, it's possible that your battery charge can get so low that some of the electronic equipment will just cease to function because it's under a minimum voltage, like let's say 10.5 volts. So making sure that your alternator is working properly, making sure that your system kicks into high idle when you're using the lift or you have your AC turned on is really important for battery life on this type of vehicle. So that could be possible, issues that you're having.
And then did you guys talk about the air conditioning system yet?
We will. We're going to get into that here soon. Yeah.
So on those, is the engine battery connected to the battery that's underneath?
Yes.
So they run together?
Yes.
Could it possibly be the battery on the engine?
Yes. It could be, yeah.
Because I know it took forever.
Yeah, it
to
could be
figure out what
corrosion.
the battery was, it went dead on the one we had.
Yeah.
Not knowing that it's back up underneath everything.
Yeah. So on our vehicles, that we have 2 batteries, and they both sit underneath there, and they run everything. And then we've got 2 alternators to 1 alternator, depending on the style of vehicle that we have.
So another thing, many years ago, before we had Dave and Justin come work for us, we did have a series of vehicles that had a battery isolator. So in our battery compartment, we had 2 batteries, and in the middle was a battery isolator. The thought was back then was to use the battery isolator to keep both batteries from draining down on each other. Because if one battery's low, it'll want to drag the other one down with it, and it just keep discharging until nothing. Well, we added that battery isolator in there, and it just proved to be just as problematic as running without it, because we were running the vehicles almost every day of the week, so having batteries drain down wasn't really such a big issue, and so we moved away from the battery isolator.
So that's probably a good idea, because typically they don't use the lift all that often.
Yeah.
So to have that separated, that one particular battery is just for that lift.
No, they're actually running off both batteries.
Yep.
Yeah, so we've got a dual battery system, and they both power the lift and everything else as it's running. If you have a fleet where you're not using the vehicles as much, you might want to send somebody out maybe once every 3 to 5 days, just go start up that vehicle to keep the batteries from discharging each other. But typically that hasn't been a problem with UTA because we use a lot of our buses all the time. Yeah, it will.
Yeah, definitely. And any other questions?
So you were saying every 30,000 miles to oil the lift. So when you get a basic oil change, you get it lubricated.
We take a look at them every 3,000. We'll lubricate them around 20, right? I believe it's around 20,000.
So when we get an oil change, have them look at it, make sure everything's running right.
Yep, and every day, you know, every day you do your run, just unfold it, look for leaks, you know, things like that. Just doing it.
How often should you maintenance them?
We maintenance ours every 3,000. We're looking at them every 3,000. Every preventative maintenance inspection we go through. So we do preventative maintenance on ours, and we start off with, like, you know, a minor inspection, which is typically an E inspection that goes up from there. And when we hit the 20 to 24,000 mile range, we do a major inspection where we go over the entire bus. Everything gets.
That's what kind of a small operation.
Yeah.
But you're talking miles. Doesn't John have a spec on that counter? There's so many lifts you should be doing.
They do.
They do.
There's a cycle.
So the maintenance of the lift is really up to you. I mean, they've got in there how often you should maintain your lift, how, you know, what points to lubricate, when to check this and that. But, you know, in a situation where we're dealing with the public and we've got a certain liability issue, we have to make sure that the lift is running optimum at all times. So the maintenance schedule is really up to you. You could go off of your lift counter if you want, by the number of cycles, or you could go mileage like we do at UTA. But you can certainly set up your own maintenance schedule. I would definitely use the manual where they recommend so many often to determine which fluids to use and how often to do it.
Yeah, like you said, sometimes some guys will use the lift a lot. Guys with small operations won't use it as much. Or
Yeah.
I think they
if
call
you're not
for.
putting a lot of miles on it, then you're probably less than the count.
I think they call for a certain inspection, like 750 cycles of the lift, and there's another more major, I can't remember, I want to say 3,000 cycles of the lift, but I can't quote that exactly, but the owner's manual on a lot of these lifts will say that, but there's certain intervals of cycles on how often you'd actually do certain maintenance on it. So like, yeah, we said, the way we use it, we need to be using mileage as more trackable measurement for us. Yeah, exactly.
we do. We put a lot of miles on ours.
And we do use our lifts a lot too, in conjunction with that miles is our main customer is oftentimes lift dependent, so.
Something else to kind of note as well is that Braun has different lifts. So like I was saying, it's a Century lift. We have a Millennium 2 lift, and that lift will actually lift less than the Century. So I believe that one's around 800 pounds, where the Century is 1,000. So no, you know, reading your manual is key here, because when you got a big wheelchair, you know, you'll want the Century versus the Millennium 2 or whatever. If it won't lift the wheelchair, it may not be a maintenance issue. It may be the style of lift.
Yeah, we had some of those fun rack-on lifts for a while. We still do it.
Yeah.
And since we've been getting Braun in the UTA 5310 program in those vehicles, the 1,000-pound, you say it's the Millennium, is it?
The Century.
The Century.
Century.
Those have been really nice.
Yeah.
Sure got the rack on.
Oh yeah, big time, big time. So, any other questions? Okay, I'll hand it over to Matt here.
All right, let's go back. Okay, we're going to talk about bus breakdowns and what we can help you understand as far as what's happening with your bus and what you can do to get yourself to a safe area, to an EOL, or back to the shop, whichever one's going to work the best. So we're going to go over what you might encounter on the road. We'll go over some no air conditioning issues, lights on the dash, some burning smells, loss of fluids, lack of power, drivability issues, overheats, and we'll touch again a little bit on the wheelchair lift issues. So if the air conditioning is not optimal, one thing you can do is reset the bus. A lot of the newer buses are coming with a lot of circuit boards, and so they get kind of messed up inside, so they need to be reset. So one thing you could do is turn the bus off, let it sit for about 10-15 seconds, restart it, see if that would help. One thing also you could do, because a lot of the new buses have electronic valves, so if you turn it to the heat, turn it back to cold, see if you can get that system to work again, because it could be bypassing some coolant and creating a hot air condition. At our place, anything below 80 degrees and the AC is not working, we do ask that the windows get open and the vent hatch. But because of some of the the clientele that we do carry, if there's anything over 80 degrees, contact the shop and we'll schedule a trade out. When you do encounter air conditioning problems, we do ask for as much information as possible. These buses have AC in the front, they have AC in the rear. So when we're told AC doesn't work, that doesn't help us out at all. Sometimes you'll get AC coming out of your defrost fan, and you might not realize it. But that's an easy fix for us, and it gives us a quicker idea of how to get the bus fixed and out on the road a lot faster. So the more information you have, the better for us. Let's see. So, and then the water valves. So our buses do have manual valves underneath. They're right underneath, right behind the driver's door. That is an area that you could just reach down and turn those off and just see if it gets cold at that point. Because like I said, the electronic solenoids that we have that control the valves, they do fail a lot. And so you'll get a lot of coolant bypassing through and creating a hot condition. So some of the dash lights, some of these that's okay to run. If it's a solid check engine light, it means that there was a fault and you could be still good to drive it, but I would still recommend contacting your dispatch and reporting the problem to them. If the engine is running with no problems, obviously report that and you can still continue on your route. Most of the time when you have a check engine light that came on and went away, it's an emissions related issue and it logged it, and if it comes back on again, it'll start flashing instead of being a solid light. So if you have ABS or traction control light on, we do actually still run ours as long as there's no braking problems. So if it is a dry road condition, we will continue en route. But if it is raining or snowing outside, obviously we don't want to deal with the safety of that. So we will have you pull over to a safe place and then we'll trade the bus out from there. So things to report immediately. Flashing check engine lights. So obviously there is an active code in there. It could be a position sensor that's going out and can cause some damage to their engine. So those things you want to call the dispatch right away. The no charge light, obviously we're going to have a problem with our charging system. We want to make sure that we don't lose the rest of the power of the battery because the bus will shut off at that point. And report any overheat issues. We will go over those later as well. If you do have a low oil pressure light that does come on, check your oil pressure gauge if your bus does have that, and that'll get us an understanding if it's just the sensor that's creating that light to come on, or if you do have low oil pressure. So, some burning or fluid smells. If you have an exhaust smell, we do ask you make sure that all the windows and vents are closed because we don't want to have that exhaust coming into the bus. Any electrical smells, make sure that you pull over to a safe place and then call dispatch. We want to make sure that you turn the bus off, if you could get the passengers off. If you see anything that's continually burning or smoking, we just want to make sure everybody's safe. And fluid smells, pull over to a safe place if you can, and get out and kind of look underneath and inspect to see if you see anything dripping. If you could, to try to identify the fluid, it would help us out a lot as well. So, and then call dispatch to report that. Any burning rubber smell, pull over to a safe place again. If you can identify the smell, or even, pop the hood up and look if it's a belt slipping, if the tires are creating an issue. Sometimes the duals will get low and they'll rub on each other, can create a smell that way. Or brakes dragging. If the brakes get too hot, you'll get the brake smell, and it'll also create a rubbery smell with the tires. So anything that you might smell that's not normal, if you could help us troubleshoot that and call dispatch, that would help us out a lot. So active fluid leaks, again, pull over to a safe area. If you can identify the fluids as much as possible, that would help us out tremendously. Notify dispatch, is it an active leak? And if it is an active leak, is there any way that you can help contain that fluid? When we have too much fluid coming out of our buses, we do have to report that to the EPA. So we've had instances where the fluid has gone down in the storm drains, and we've had to go down there and clean those up. So if you can contain those, that would save the company a lot. And then again, make sure you stay safe in traffic, because that's the main thing that we're worried about, is your safety. And then we just have a couple fluids here to look at. In our division, we are actually diesel free. We are 100% gas. But if you do have diesel, you're gonna notice that your oil is gonna be very, very dark, very black. And then the gasoline engines, you'll see it's a little bit light brown color. The reddish is going to be mainly your transmission fluid. Could be also power steering, depending on the bus manufacturer, what kind of fluid they use. And then your brake fluid, it's going to be a little bit clearer. It's not going to be as dark. With coolant, it's a little different because manufacturers are changing the colors of their coolant, right? Some are green, some are orange, some are pink. So it's a little bit hard to try to see that. And then especially in the summertime, you're always going to have water leaking out, right, from the condenser of your AC system. So if you experience a lack of power, you want to look for an active check engine light. Identify, if possible, if it's affecting the transmission or the engine side. If you feel like the engine's revving up and you're not going, most likely it's going to be a transmission problem. You can feel for the brakes dragging. Sometimes it'll pull to the left or the right, depending on your situation. In the winter time, we do have a lot of problems where the water gets splashed up on the brakes, and we'll get a pulling condition. So you can heat those up a little bit, and it'll dry that out. Possible flat tires, again, that will, or the tire being low, that will also cause a pulling condition to one side, depending on what tire is flat. So the main thing, again, is to pull over to a safe area, look over the bus, contact dispatch, and if possible and safe, try to continue en route. I'm going to turn the time over to Robert.
Hello, folks. Yeah, my name's Robert. I've been working with UTA for 25 years. Seeing a lot in my time. You said you're with the 5310?
We get vehicles from 5310.
With UTA? All right, anybody else in here with 5310? Okay, so you're familiar with Christy and Tracy Young, and you work with them. Sometimes they'll call me and ask for support. Not too often, but I usually give them a hand on their vehicles, especially when they're new. They go to inspect them and stuff like that. So if you have any questions, you could ask them, get in touch with me for any advice that you may need. So let's see, next page. So talking about loss, I'm sorry, wrong way? No, sorry, my bad. So drivability issues, identifying possible issues. So with the steering, people know how it should feel. If it's stiff, if it's too loose, pulls to one side, or shaking in the steering. It could be a number of issues, alignment issues. Maybe you've curbed the vehicle and knocked out the alignment. That's something that's probably going to need a professional to take a look at and get it back in alignment. You could also check your tires to see what kind of wear you're getting on them. That usually indicate whether it's a mechanical issue or if you've got a severe toe in, toe out, issues that could affect your steering. Braking system, soft pedal, hard pedal, pulling to one side during braking. If you've got a soft pedal, it's probably because you may have air in the line. Maybe you've had something done recently, like a brake job, and they didn't properly bleed all the air out. Or it could be something as simple as the fluid is just too old. I'm not sure if you know it or not, but brake fluid is considered hygroscopic. It will wick moisture out of the air. So if you open up your hood and you're missing your cap on your brake reservoir, you know, it could be possible. It's been sitting that way for a while and you've wicked in a lot of moisture, and that will cause, well, not will, it could cause a soft braking issue. So when you're getting your brakes done, if you're having your pads replaced or your calipers replaced, you might want to ask them, can you flush my brake system too, and put new fluid in it. Performance, slow, sluggish, rough running. For more information, easier to troubleshoot. Performance of the vehicle, like I said, you're going to have your check engine light. If you know how to read DTCs, or if you got a code reader, it could probably tell you what condition your vehicle's in, what the issue may be. If you don't have that, maybe you could stop into Checker or Auto if they're kind enough to, lend out a diagnostic tool to figure that information out. Overheating, bus running hot, bus engine running hot. So some of the things you could do to get to possibly back to the shop or your end of the line, if you notice that the temperature gauge on your dash is increasing, you can turn the AC off for one and then turn your heater on. I used to do that all the time with some of my older vehicles going up Parley's Canyon, otherwise I would have never made it, especially the month of August. Downshift to a lower gear. This will make the engine run faster to circulate the coolant. In the past, we had issues with drivers going up to the U of U, especially some of our older vehicles clear back when. They'd get up to the top, they'd notice that their temp gauge is pegging out, and so the first thing they want to do, oh, I got to stop the engine, so they turn it off. The moment they turn it off, the cooling system would puke. So you actually got to go against what you think is right. You get to the top of the hill, flip it in neutral, throttle the engine to get the coolant circulating through your radiator so your fan could cool it better. But if you're running into a situation where the vehicle's running hot, don't shut it down. Just put it neutral, throttle it, get it to cool down. Hopefully it won't be something like a stuck thermostat. When it's stuck closed, yeah, that could be bad. Let's see, you pull over to a safe place, look for leaking coolant, put the bus in neutral and rev the engine to 3,500 RPM. Yep, if nothing seems to help, contact dispatch. Wheelchair lift issues, no power to the pendant. I believe, was it Dave? You covered part of that. Yeah. So, as great as the system is, there's still some issues with the wheelchair lift in a bus. For one, you'll notice on a lot of the cutaway buses that the back end of the vehicle is higher than the front end. So already when you're putting in a wheelchair lift inside the vehicle, it's not square with the ground. And Dave covered this, but sometimes the wheelchair lift will develop a leak over time, especially with more use, and it'll start to drift. And so when it starts to drift, especially with the Braun lifts, they have a switch on the right-hand side, and if it drifts out far enough, it kills the power to your pendant, and that could be an issue. And that's where Dave said, close your hands, put your button on the fold, and then push and get it back into the upright folded position. Yeah, so check to make sure the lift is completely folded in the stow position. Check to make sure the outer bridge plate is not broken or damaged. Make sure the outer bridge plate adjustment can prevent the lift from locking in the stow position. I was told by a Braun field technician, he came out and did some training with the UTA once, 80 to 90% of the issues with the Braun lift could be traced back to the micro switches, let's see, right there on the outer platform, or I'm sorry, the outer barrier. And then there's an inner barrier switch. Sometimes the wires like to break, and if they're on back order, it could take a week to get that switch, but most of the time you'll find that it's broken wires and you can make the repair yourself and get the vehicle back out on the road. So just some items to keep in mind. Check the tires for sign of damage. It's not so much a problem at UTA because we put so many miles on our vehicles, but yeah, you want to check to make sure that your tires aren't too old. The weather checking on the outside, you don't have any kind of zipper rupture or bulges. Make sure your tires properly inflated, especially on the rear tires. If the tires get too low in the back, they could actually rub each other. The dual tires on a dual tire system, they could rub on each other as they're going down the road, and that could cause heat and wear and other issues. So conclusion, safety, keep yourself and your customers safe. We're all a team. The more information you could put down on your, let's see, we call it the DEC for Driver's Equipment Condition Report. You guys may know it as a DVI, Driver Vehicle Inspection. But the more information you put down on that report, the better it is for the mechanic to get the problem fixed properly. Here at UTA, we've got so many buses that come in, we only can spend maybe 10 to 15 minutes trying to find a problem that you may have. If the problem is severe enough, I would suggest come in and talk to the maintenance people, let them know the kind of issue that you're having. Better communication will provide a better repair. That way it reduces the possibility of having a road call or a breakdown in service. Let's see. Oh, and that's it. Is there any other questions? Any issues? No? So some of the tips that I could give you, being, working as I did in the industry, I would suggest checking your vehicle, especially if you send it to an outside shop or a dealership. It's great to say that they're professionals, ASE certification and all that, but the best thing that you could do after picking up a vehicle from a repair is to do a walk around, open the hood, check your engine belts, stuff like that. Get inside the vehicle, start it. Do you hear a lot of engine noise inside the driver area that you didn't hear before? Because, mistakes happen. If you go to a shop where flat rate is, the norm there, they're in a hurry. They're trying to get on to the next job and make more money. But so the best thing I could say is after picking up your vehicle, do a walk around, run your lift, check your engine belts and stuff like that. Listen for engine noise. If you got smells or something coming in the cab, maybe they didn't get the engine cover properly seated the way it should be inside. But, anything like that will help you avoid a road call if you're dealing with service, maintenance outside of your own company. Any questions about that?
Some of the things that you guys presented, is that in the manual, like you take the drivers and just have them do the check off for those like smells and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's something that should be covered on like a pre-trip or a post-trip.
So we'll have all the presentations put up on our website. So you'll be able to, if anybody missed it or you want to share this with, that'll be there. This presentation is being recorded. And so we'll have all that. And we can also ask for the slide decks if they don't mind sharing them, and we can get the slide decks out so that if you want to go back and refresher and look at those things and share those things with your teams, we can do that for sure.
So one thing we also do is that we just recently started is called a roundtable discussion. And so we go over to operations and we sit there as maintenance and we answer any kind of questions. We also have an open door policy where any operator can come over anytime they want and they can ask any questions. And so we do extend that information out to them in those certain situations. Like I said, or like we talked about, we're all a team. We're working for the same goal, right? And so if we can get more information, we provide as much information as we can, and we're open to any discussion that we need to have with any operators. So we do what we can to get the information out, and we're working on better processes right now where we'll have stuff like this available for operators to look at consistently as they're going through their downtime. So, yeah.
So I'm impressed with your team here. It's good to have in-house people, which I wish we had.
Yeah.
But how hard is it to get somebody in your agency to be qualified to work with the lifts? That's one of our biggest issues, because you get these lifts that get used a lot, and a lot of times they don't get fixed until they're broken. If you're not doing preventive maintenance, you got a bigger cost.
Mm-hmm.
And for us as an agency to find somebody that we could put in-house to do that, I'm being told that I got to be a dealer to require that, and obviously you're not a dealer.
Yeah. We have an awesome internal training program that our apprentices will go through, but we also offer some training throughout the year for refresher training for our mechanics. And so I know there's been some talk about branching out and doing some extra training in that type of area, but I'm not sure if Braun offers anything that you could get them to come out and kind of work with you guys as well. There's some independent training agencies that can come out and help train as well. But
we're across the state, so we have, I got about 60 vehicles, and a good portion of them have the lifts in them between the Raccoon and the Browns. And to get somebody in each city to work on, I mean, down south is ridiculous. There's hardly anybody down there that works on the lifts. And there is a few, the most are in Salt Lake area, and then you get into Weaver, Davis, it's just as bad.
yeah.
So, long term,
is certified, and originally got, he went through getting a course for it through manufacturers.
so an additional resource long term is that UTA's applied for a grant to create a maintenance training center, which would not be only available to UTA, but would be able to be available to folks on the street. This is not happening tomorrow, right? Because it's a facility and whatnot. But part of that application for that grant was to make that available, outside of UTA. And so I think that feedback like that's important so that we can say, look, what is the need? And could URSTA facilitate training, through a center like that? And what I'd say is give us feedback. So as URSTA, right? Because training is one of our key objectives. And if lift maintenance training is one of those hot topic items that we would like to get some more, either bring some people in, we would also be willing to facilitate that. We have some funding to do that. And so, if that's of interest to some of your organizations where lifts are a big deal and you're struggling with that, then let me know, let Tracy know, let anybody on the board know, and we'll work with Jason Green, who's kind of leading our training right now, and we can also help facilitate that, either at state level or regional level, and try and bring out.
I need to get your lift precautionaries and different things you could do in case of, and build into my training for a lot of my drivers to understand what to do out on the road.
So I'll take that back to Jason Green and put that into our requests, for training issues, to see if we can address that in a better way.
When I first started getting 5310 vehicles from y'all, I remember I went to Lewis Bus to pick those up, and they were so excited they had a guy on board that was going to take a mobile unit out, and he promised me he'd go out and accomplish that. Well, he disappeared, and then COVID hit, and the whole situation disappeared. And that's one of my biggest challenges, is finding somebody to work on the lift and is certified to work on the lift. And of course, nowadays, they're also getting the parts.
So that's good feedback. We'll take that back to our group and see how we can maybe address that in a better way.
So, yeah, COVID's kind of made a mess of things. Before COVID, it was possible to call Braun and see when their field technician or training guy would come out. Back in the past, we've had them come out a few times. It's not really that easy, but sometimes if you could get other companies, that want to join in on one training class, and sometimes we'll either have it like maybe at Lewis Bus Group, which was our last training, right? Was that Lewis? Yeah. Or sometimes they'll come to the shop, but we'll invite other people from other transit agencies to do the training all as one. That way they have enough people to justify having the training course. But yeah, post-COVID, lack of help, lack of support. Braun Ability does have a website, and you can find a lot of resources and documents on that, especially for your particular lift, if you just check out their website. And I do believe Braun Ability has even made some videos that you possibly even find on YouTube, either how to operate the lift or maintain the lift. Yeah, so those are, resources to go to.
But, when you get into a situation, somebody gets hurt, you want to make sure that you can tell the responsible people that a responsible certified person worked on it.
Yeah. Situation where you buy a brand new vehicle and, everything's working fine for the first, 24,000 miles. And then something starts to happen. I could tell you that adjustments won't be covered under warranty. So if you have a lift that's out of adjustment, you should refer to either the troubleshooting guide or possibly a video, but I would suggest don't touch that tower number 4 switch.
Yeah, we've had some major problems with that tower number 4.
Yeah. Yes?
We ran into the same problem, nobody certified to, work on.
Yeah.
We got in contact with Ron Building.
Yeah.
And had one of our mechanic shops get somebody certified.
Yeah. Yeah, they will come out and perform training and then give you a certificate of completion, for the course. And how long is that good for? What, 5 years?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so, a certificate that says you're trained for 5 years, or at least until the next model comes out.
One of their things was that they would only have one person certified within like a 60-mile radius or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So where are you guys from?
Roosevelt.
Oh, Roosevelt, okay.
Yeah, that's the same problem that we have. We live 7 miles from her, and we have to drive all the way to Salt Lake and find someone to fix our buses. And, that would be a real help if you guys can help us find someplace that, we're taking our bus here, and they're taking it here, and then you get back home, and then you end up with the same problem, and it's just money wasted,
Yeah.
We
money and
got
time.
somebody over at Craig's. that's
Craig's
certified
Pit Stop?
now.
Oh,
In
from Colorado?
No,
In Durham.
Craig's Pit Stop in Durham.
Yeah, we face the same issue too, as, sometimes trying to get a Braun representative to come out to perform training. Like, Matt said, we do a lot of in-house training too, where we pass the knowledge, and, our training department, we work with them, and then of course we have mentor instructors and mentor trainers in our shop, to keep everybody abreast of the issues that we're having. But yeah, in a situation where you guys are clear out there away from, a service center that's got a factory trained authorized mechanic to work on your lift, yeah, that's a big issue. So, any other questions? Oh, are we good?
Okay, well, thank you so much for letting us come in and present to you. We really appreciate it, and